Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to our channel, The Lit Meet. I hope you are doing well today, despite the challenges of this online learning. Also, I hope you already have clicked the like and the subscribe button to keep everyone inspired. So today we're going to discuss some features of great literature. I know you have encountered Horace, Percy B. Shelley telling us of the two greatest characteristics of literature, that is to instruct and to delight. But I thought today I'm going to present to you a near version, or rather a version or the features of literature from those two great things or those two great ideas that were given to us by Percy B. Shelley as well as Horace. So I'm going to present to you 8 features of great literature. So let's begin. Inspired by Horace and Percy B. Shelley's To Delight and to Instruct, first feature of a literature to be considered great is that it presents many different situations as well as characters from a broad range of social classes which has or who has empathy and understanding, which is not limited to a single point perspective on situations. Like our Iliad and Odyssey, for example, or say Iliad, we have our Hector and Achilles. They are actually giving us two different perspectives on how men would react. Achilles, he felt so betrayed by Agamemnon, and he got actually insulted when Agamemnon took Briseis away from him. So he reacted based on what he thought to be the best reaction there could be. And then there was also our Hector. Hector, he believes that he has to protect his country, his woman, and he has to obey the gods. And then we also have our women characters. We have Briseis. We also have Andromache. Andromache, although she had begged Hector to stay with them and not fight in the war, she was in the end unable to do anything but accept the fate that indeed, as a wife, sometimes what you can do is just watch your husband die in battle. We also have our Briseis, the young priestess, who was the object of envy as well as the object of anger between Agamemnon and Patroclus. You see, we have different characters. They show us different perspectives. But all in all, we know that these characters and these situations, they mirror whatever is happening in real life. So that is the first character, or that's the first feature of a great literature. The second feature is that characters have shown with psychological depth and clarity of motivation. For a work, as Edgar Allan Poe would put it, there must really be a motive. At the start of the story, actually, we would be told of the causes of such reactions. But these characters, we know, they're acting really as human. They portray what human beings feel. Their depth, their understanding, and their clarity of objectives or motivation would tell us that these people is usually how human beings like you and me interact in a certain situation. So that's the second feature of our great literature. The third feature of a great literature that we will discuss is that a great literature grasps the spirit and historical particulars of the age. It does not mean that it stops on that age. Rather, it grasps. Murag iyang gagunitan ba or magunitan niya ang spirit of historical particular sa age, and it can mirror it to our age now. In other words, in the experience of Rizal, it could be true that they are fighting for their freedom and they had fought it via pen and guns or bolos. And now, it does not necessarily mean that we have to do that. Instead, we're facing another problem, but it has something to do with our freedom as well. For example, now that we are in the pandemic, we have to continue learning. How do we fight that we don't succumb to poverty, that we don't succumb to depression, that we don't succumb to self-pity. That still is a fight that is mirrored in that particular spirit. In our age now, how do we do that? So it mirrors. It mirrors the different ways, it mirrors the different factors. Not perhaps exactly the same situation, but then again, as I've mentioned, they reflect each other. The great or a great literature piece tells us, or at least guides us, on how we can possibly fight a particular battle that we are facing. So we continue. Another feature of a great literature is language. Oftentimes, this work often expands the use of language by breaking rules, like Shakespeare, for instance. Shakespeare wasn't so bookish in following just the rules of his time. Instead, he had adapted into his poetry, into his drama, the colloquial language, the language of the people, the slang, those language or the kind of language wherewith the common people can, react, can understand. It's a language that is understandable not just by those very high in the society, and it's not just a language that is just seen on a particular group of people. Instead, with these work of arts, it brings about different kinds of people through adaptation of the languages that they have. So somehow, when you read a great book, you would see the culture that a certain group is practicing by the way the language is presented or by the way a language is used. Another example is Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien was not afraid to use or to create languages for his different characters. So you see, language plays a very, very important role in literature. Although, again, as mentioned earlier, it might break some rules, but then it is by so doing that we get to understand better our characters. Percy B. Shelley and Horace also told us that a great literature instructs. It does not actually tell us what to do, like you do this, you do that. Instead, it gives us more of this philosophical function. It challenges us to think our humanity and our relationship to society and the larger cosmos that we inhabit. As an old saying would put it, life is a web. We affect one another, like the pandemic that we're having right now. If we choose to go out of our houses or our homes, we're putting more risk, not just to the frontliners, but also to the ones that we love. So really, like when we read, we don't have to experience everything. We could just learn from what we're reading, and from there we could think. It's like, what is my role or what is my duty to the society that I have right now? So it's a way of making us think, making us realize that we are not the only person that matter in this universe. Actually, with a great literature, more or less it makes us think that OMG, the universe can actually exist without me. The earth will continue to rotate, to revolve around the sun, even without me. So, how do I make life, my life, and the life of others, perhaps, a bit lighter? And stuffs like that. Another feature, accordingly, is that if a literature is so great, it would have an influence. Example of which is the works of Edgar Allan Poe, the father of detective stories. When Edgar Allan Poe writes his stories, everything is there. He has his rules for short poems and long poems, and these writers actually are affected or they are influenced by the tenets that Edgar Allan Poe had created. It is with, for example, Green. or the writer of Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown, most possibly he also had read Edgar Allan Poe to follow those characterizations that we see in their work. But then, our influence does not happen overnight. Instead, it is created through the years. As we put it, the older the wine, the better it tastes. As the book goes, it is tested by time. If it passed the test, then perhaps it is a great literature. And when it passes that, when it is considered great, like Homer, it influences. It helps you think clearer. Ambiguity must be sufficient to stir continuous debate as to what the text presents. A great literature does not tell you directly that, oh, there is a Carabao. Instead, it describes to you that there is that thing. Or it does not tell you right away that she is in pain. Instead, she describes to you how she cries, how she laments, how she whimpers, how she sits in the corner of a dark library, listening to the silence all around her and the lights. Or when someone writes about the society, say Fahrenheit 451, it does not directly tell you that this is what is happening in the society and that is what should be happening in the society. Instead, it gives you ample ideas, a lot of ideas to talk about, to consider about in a certain text. Using the text also, you could discuss it politically, perhaps, socially, economically, psychologically, all these facets of human life. Another characteristic is that the great literature has a variety of style. Actually, it has something to do with the writer. The writer on this one, it refused to deal with a certain thing just as one approach. Instead, it gives us different approaches on how to see that thing. Example, you see a sunflower. A writer or a great literature will be able to let you see the sunflower from all sides, not just the side that is facing the sun, or not just the side that shows its shadow. Instead, it lets you see the thing as a whole with the use of its style. And also with this variety of style, it refuses, it basically refuses to be imprisoned on the ways of approaching a subject. Lastly, a great literature has formal integrity. The author controls the text well enough so that its apparent idea is realized. As Edgar Allan Poe would tell you, when you write a short story, the first part, or when you introduce your story, you should be able to tell the audience or the readers why something is going to happen in your story. Like the Cask of Amontillado, for example. It started with, Fortunato had insulted me 1,000 times, or so to that line. So we knew then why Prospero is angry with Fortunato. He had been insulted. So as Pound would put it, use no word that doesn't contribute to the presentation. As Poe would also put it, Edgar Allan Poe would put it, when you create your story, make certain that all parts are put together and all parts contribute to the greater effect of your story. Thank you for listening. I hope you were able to grasp something that will be of help to your literature classes. If you have not liked and subscribed to the channel yet, I hope you would, as this would keep on inspiring us. Keep safe, everyone. Until the next video. Ciao!